Hello and welcome to Rock Paper Shotgun. In today's video, the shotgun in question is a Spaz 12, which does 99.7 thousand points of damage. It's high-end loot we have in our Division 2 demo, a gun so powerful it's basically a war crime just to look at the thing. Of course, you won't have such treats if you jump into the Division 2's beta on Thursday. That unfolds in the game's opening hours, where the guns are less likely to tear a hole in the space-time continuum. We recently played both the beta content and the Division 2's endgame action, the stuff hoping to keep you playing long after you've hit level 30 and finished the campaign. Sadly, we've yet to see the new raids, although creative director Julian Geraghty tells us that they lean heavily into puzzle solving and coordination between 8-player fire teams. Oh, and that the first raid, which arrives soon after launch, takes place off the existing world map in a super iconic location. My money is on the steps that the priest fell down in The Exorcist, though I might be wrong. I'm going to whip through what we saw in the demo, focusing mainly on the new faction, missions and specializations that kick in after the main story. And I'm going to explain a few ways that the Division 2 is really getting the endgame right. If you enjoy this video as it goes along, maybe consider giving it a like or subscribing. Think of our channel as a tatty Division settlement overrun by looters. That thumbs up really helps cheer us up as the bandits hit us with baseball bats. A big problem I have with loot shooters and their infinite endgames is the fact that they often feel like arbitrary difficulty bumps. It's everything you've been doing for the last 20 hours, but a tiny bit harder. Endless repetition with slightly more pain is a good metaphor for my decline into old age, although the only legendary loot I want is a pair of really comfy slippers. The Division 2 solution is to give the endgame its own story, built on the arrival of a new faction called Black Tusk. The idea is simple but kind of brilliant. That city you've just worked hard to clear out? Well, now some really nasty bastards want to move in. And this isn't just a case of new neighbours playing their music too loud. They've got armies of robot dogs, which are definitely not house-trained. Black Tusk bring new story missions, but they'll also occupy places familiar to you, from Dark Zone sectors to locations that hosted previous campaign missions. This current footage is on a return trip to the Air and Space Museum. The poor guys only just got their planetarium working from the last fight, and here we are to shoot it up afresh. I was worried that Black Tusk might just be a sneaky reskin of pre-existing factions, but Geraghty assures me that this isn't the case. He says every faction is built around a specific kind of challenge that Massive Entertainment want to create, be it the chaotic movement and anger of the Hyenas, to the disciplined military organisation of the True Sons. The Black Tusk are the game's most efficient faction, equipped to take back the city with minimum of fuss. This means an obscene amount of hardware, from those robot dogs to drones and bomb disposal robotics. Of course, you see some of these things in earlier missions, but the Black Tusk has enough resources to flood the world with violent electronics before a fleshy human foot even steps into the room. Of course, Black Tusk don't force away older factions. You'll still be able to play those previous campaign missions on harder difficulties to squeeze fresh rewards from them. But I think the invaded locations promise more variation. I mean literally so. Regular campaign levels have fixed enemy numbers and placements that won't change from replay to replay, although the numbers do change when you shift between solo and team play. But in invaded levels, the enemy presence is randomised every time. Enter a famous monument or location where Black Tusk are trying to claim squatters' rights, such as this federal nuclear bunker, and anything could be waiting for you. You'll encounter different Black Tusk numbers and enemy types, changing the rhythm of every run. We had a relatively easy go in the bunker, and I wonder if it's down to the game design gods smiling on us. And Geraghty says it is possible for the game to unfold at a gentle stroll, only to dump 3 heavies on you in one go. Only having time to take one run at the bunker, it's impossible to see this randomised effect in motion, but on paper any variation has to be welcomed in a genre built on endless repetition. The invasions I'm really keen to see are the strongholds. There are 3 of these fortress-like locations that act as headquarters for the 3 factions. The True Sons, we're told, live in the Capitol building, for example. example. Wiping out the 3 bases serves as the end of the traditional campaign, but that only opens them up to become super tough Black Tusk strongholds. Even then, Geraghty says a capable enough solo player could still brute force their way through with the right loot, as they managed with even the hardest incursions in the Division 1. He says it's the raids that will truly serve the hardcore the challenge they've been looking for. Just because the tourist hotspots of Washington DC have turned into a robot dog hellhole, it doesn't mean you're safer on the streets. Massive keep referring to their map as a generative living world, which is a slightly wanky way of saying stuff happens on the map. The question is the stuff any good? Well, from our few hours with the campaign, the map doesn't feel radically different to the first game. There are more things to collect off the bat, like SHD tech caches that award points used to buy skills and perks, and there's a bigger civilian presence on the streets, with allied gangs going on scavenging missions and joining in fights that break out near them. There's also more shape to each district, with a central settlement that grows as you help the surrounding area, which in turn sends people back to the main base of operation, that'll be the White House, to unlock new features. The whole thing feels slightly more organic than pumping resources into the 3 research wings of the first game, although I'm not sure if stripping settlements of their most talented staff sends the right message. Personally, if I was running a settlement and some division jerk turned up and told my prize chef here to go and live with him in the White House, I'd be pretty pissed off. What is it about that building that turns so many of its tenants into grasping a-holes? That's 10 times the political commentary than you'll get in the Division 2, by the way. But however you look at them, settlements are just a fancy skin for a wider skill tree, one that unlocks a drip feed of functions back at your base of operations. By the time you reach the end of the campaign, you'll have exhausted the community building aspect, which feels like a bit of a shame. On one hand, it's understandable that they want a nice, finite achievement for people who just want to play the campaign. I mean, did you know that more people completed the first game's campaign than any other Ubisoft game? I mean, that might be partly to blame on Assassin's Creed becoming a 9 trillion hour slog, but it also means there's a crowd to cater to with a neatly bookended experience. But personally, I'd like to see Civilization grow with my character beyond the story. Maybe we'll see more of this as the map expands across the 3 free story expansions that will arrive over the course of the first year. Where the streets do offer more potential endgame fun is in the new control points, which almost feel like a more dynamic take on Far Cry's outposts. If you can seize one of these hotly contested areas, you gain access to its local supplies, which vary from location to location, and in the campaign portion of the game at least, go towards developing the local settlement. Taking control is a simple case of wiping out the faction currently occupying it, and then holding off waves of attackers and their enemy leader as they arrive to take it back. Ideally, it's done with a bit more grace than taking a random pot shot at a mounted turret and hoping your pals will come to your aid. Sorry about that, team. Seizing this fallen crane's support point, as you're watching here, isn't too tricky, but we were a low level and the challenge will obviously scale with you. What's more interesting is the promise that the battle for control points will rage on forever, with factions attempting to reclaim points, putting you at the heart of an eternal turf war, if you want to engage with it. In the end game, that obviously means dealing with Black Tusk 2, who will quickly move on control points once they turn up in the city. Personally, I love any system that can create action set pieces out in the streets, and without the constant threat of treachery that the PvP Dark Zone brings with it. More of this kind of thing, please. That's a fairly sizable menu of activities to chew through, even if every course is bullets with a side order of bullets, garnished with a light napalm. To spice the meal up, massive add specializations that come into play at level 30. These give you a signature weapon and a skill tree for that role, all unlocked back at your base of operation using the same SHD tech points amassed through the campaign. In our demo, I picked Demolitionist because this is a YouTube channel and explosions play well to the cheap seats. That said, you'll find my grenade launcher, which is the Demolition Man's signature weapon, a tad underpowered in this video due to a bug that had failed to scale the damage. That's why it hits as hard as a party popper. I'm told it scales with you in the final game. It's certainly better. The other classes are Sharpshooter, who gets a sniper rifle, and the Survivalist, who brings a crossbow to the party and can lay traps. We couldn't get into the skill tree to see exactly what each can do, but I was very taken with the Demolitionist mod for the gun turret that adds mortar fire. Placing my little friend and calling in bombardments is not just incredibly satisfying, but it's exactly the kind of precision toy you need to counterbalance the aggressive tech focus of Black Tusk. I also expect these skill mods to factor heavily into the puzzling side of the upcoming raids. Cryptic hints from the designers suggest you'll need to tap into all the bespoke behaviour of every skill to best these unusual missions. Helpfully, you can jump around the 3 specializations as soon as you hit level 30. This is a game that demands tactical flexibility, and you don't want to be stuck with a raid team of 8 snipers, for example. So it makes sense to let you explore all the roles through one character. And as someone who bounced off Destiny's individual class save files, I'm glad we don't have to grind through the campaign 3 times. In Bungie's game, I was ready to throw myself into the oceans of Titan by trip number 3. Along with Anthem letting us switch javelin suits at will, it's nice to see loot shooters showing a bit of respect for our free time, well, before they eat 2 years of your life. Oh, and once you've mastered the 3 roles in the game, you can expect another 3 added for 3 throughout the year. Put your predictions for signature weapons down in the comments. I'd personally settle for a robot dog of my very own. If I have one concern, besides the usual previews caveat of don't trust what you see until it's out in the wild, it's that it feels a bit easier than before. That could be down to the high-level gear that we're given in the demo. Decked out in yellow equipment, I found that we're perfectly scaled with the Black Tusk and felt overpowered in places. In the game proper, I assume we won't meet them on a level playing field from the outset, but I sense it in the early campaign too. We didn't come close to failing and appear to level up faster through the lower ranks. Garrity says the balancing in the build isn't quite done, that ideally they are looking for the sweet spot of the game being quite challenging, that it's way more fun when you're really pushed. It's something I'd agree with, but I would say there was nothing that pushed us here. As you'll see from the footage throughout, we played pretty fast and loose with cover, and while this was normal difficulty, this behaviour would have been punished in the first game. It might just be a side effect of the game offering a faster time to kill, of course, an intentional change designed to up your lethality, but one that should ideally be matched by increased enemy danger too. It certainly feels less bullet spongy than the first game, and combined with less sticky cover, it feels more like a traditional cover shooter. These are positive changes as far as I'm concerned, and make for a game that feels much nicer in the hands. But I am hoping that testing the game in our own time can find some of that missing bite. In many ways, The Division 2 is entering uncharted territory. It's a proper sequel to an online loot shooter, one that has been built in tandem with the upgrades made to the original game. You could argue Destiny 2 beat it to the punch in this regard, but that game tore up so much of its original shape that the sequel felt like it started from scratch. The Division 2 is proud of its history and takes it as the base foundation by launching with the majority of features introduced to the original over 2 years ago. And it arrives more fully formed than its competitors. Compared to, say, Anthem, it's a confident, fleshed out vision. And its plans seem generous, a year of free updates including 3 clear episodes that'll add more story map and modes, the addition of raids, plural, as well as new bounties, gears, mods. It's a satisfyingly complete idea. Of course, it remains an idea until we can sit down to play it in the wild. You just can't tell how well it works and how well the new parts click together in a 6-hour play session in conditions of Ubisoft's own making. I hope this has helped explain the shape of the Division 2's endgame and helped explain why I'm cautiously optimistic about it. In truth, I've never fully committed to one of these games as service because I find them too basic at the outset, and by the time they've added more goodies, the community has left the casual dabblers in the dust. Will this be the game to break that curse? I guess we'll find out on the 15th of March, although you can get a feel by joining the beta this week. Share your thoughts on that in the comments. And if you have any questions about what we saw, pop them down below and I'll try to answer them. Obviously, I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel. If you're not 100% convinced, why not check out our other recent previews? I recommend our Rage 2 and Metro Exodus videos. I hope to see you on the channel again soon. Bye for now.